listening to Her Profit Era, the podcast for founders who want a business that actually works. A business that's profitable, predictable, and pays them well. I'm Cindy Kumar, a CPA, a fractional CFO from Abbotsford, BC, Canada. I'm the person founders call when they're tired of high revenue months with no money left over. I started this podcast because too many founders were chasing sales while their margins, cash flow, and bank accounts told a completely different story. I believe profit and money in the bank is a standard, not a bonus, and that every founder deserves clarity around their numbers. Each week, you'll get real financial strategy you can actually use and honest conversations with founders and industry experts about what it really takes to build a business that lasts. Today's guest is someone who brings wholeness, humanity, and high-level operational leadership into the world of entrepreneurship. Alison is a fractional COO and strategic partner for founders, CEOs, and wellness entrepreneurs who want a business that runs with clarity, calm, and intention. With 20 plus years of experience in operations, systems, design, executive support, team leadership, and even yoga teacher training, she is a rare leader who can see the big vision and can help you build the infrastructure to make it real. She bridges two capacities most entrepreneurs struggle to hold at the same time: vision and execution, strategy and operations. Now, Alison creates businesses that actually work, ones where the founder is supported, the team is aligned, and the systems reduce cognitive load instead of adding to it. She's a partner who anticipates what's coming, leads initiatives with autonomy, and ensures the founder spends more time doing the work that only they can do. Her approach is deeply relational and human-centered. She brings nervous system awareness, emotional intelligence, and crystal clear communication into every room that she's in. She supports growth that is sustainable instead of overwhelming. From strategic planning to team leadership, from organizational flow to day-to-day operations, Alison is the calm in the scale-up storm. Hi, Alison. Thank you so much for joining me on Her Profit Era today.
Thank you for having me.
Could you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'd love to. I am Alison Reaume. I am a fractional COO who looks at the human first when I create systems for your business, blended with my background in yoga teaching.
Wow, that's awesome. And then what made you get into that?
I have been working with entrepreneurs and CEOs for the better part of my career. From solopreneurs to owners of multi-million dollar companies. And I think the one thing that I noticed is that in most companies, most people try to solve all their problems with software. But there is this big distinction for me in how we operate in our own capacity, how designing systems based on our own capacity is more beneficial than just picking any random software.
Why do you find it so hard for people to have systems in their business?
Because there's never enough time. It is always the thing that gets pushed to the back burner. I hear this a lot, and I think it's even one of the biggest objections I have when people want to work with me is that either they're not ready for systems, which is false, or they're just going to hire a VA to do that for them.
Yeah, I feel like time is always the biggest issue. You'd rather be client facing, doing the day-to-day versus doing the back end work.
Yeah, and I think the challenge is that without doing it, it just lives in your head.
Yeah, totally. When you work with like 6 or 7 figure businesses, what's like the first system gap you see that they need like right away?
I think it always comes back to capacity. And most people are stretched thin on a good day. Whether you have a 6 figure business or a 3 figure business, everyone
Yeah,
is stretched thin with life.
right.
The larger revenue that a company is making, the more beneficial it is to have systems to protect their time. And I think that's usually the one thing that I always focus on. So it's a little bit of calendar management and, what are your deal breakers? I have a client who, when I first started working with him, had 15,000 unread emails. And literally it was
Wow.
just open it up. And the stress and the anxiety of looking at that is overwhelming.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot.
Yes, I found it overwhelming and they weren't even my emails.
No, for sure. And I feel like, would you recommend like something like time blocking, getting your days kind of structured first before you hire someone to like build out your SOPs and like your systems? Or do you feel like you get into it, understand the client's business, and then you're kind of building that whole system for them?
Yeah, I don't necessarily recommend time blocking because it doesn't work for everyone. I mean, it's a good theory and practice, but some people aren't really into their calendar anyways, and they don't even utilize their calendar to its fullest capacity. So I think it's like, I always ask people to start with a list of, what is the stuff that you hate doing that you have to do? And then what is the stuff that you love doing that you wish you had more time to do? And then what is the goal, the overarching goal of your business, so that we can create systems that take you from where you are now, eliminate the stuff off your list that you don't want to do, whether
Hmm.
that's hiring someone or actually utilizing software and streamlining and automating things, or delegating it to someone else, so that we can create a plan for what systems need to happen in order for you to reach your goals.
That's so important, so key.
Mm-hmm.
What's like the difference between a system problem versus a people problem? Because I know a lot of times people hire VAs, but their back end is like still a mess.
Yeah, for me, it's always systems come first, before you hire anyone. I think, especially so if we're talking about entrepreneurs, generally most entrepreneurs start as a solopreneur, um, where they're doing every single task. And that first step is usually to hire a VA, but they have never documented how they
Mhm.
actually do things. So they're still holding all of that. And it just becomes a redundant problem. It's like, I have to train the VA in how to do XYZ. And then they do it their own way. And then we just create this cyclical problem that
Right.
continues to happen with everyone doing everything their own way and no structure to that.
Yeah, and I feel like when you hire someone to take over certain parts of the business, you need like systems and structure to train that person properly too.
Absolutely. And I think it's like, sometimes you can be lucky and find a great VA who has perhaps, more of an executive assistant role, who understands how to create those things. But that's not the norm. VAs tend to be dabble in a little bit of everything.
Yeah,
So it's like, my biggest thing in order to grow your business, I think, is how do we offload everything that is in your head into a repeatable system that you could essentially give to anyone else that could repeat it.
that's so helpful.
Hmm.
Are there some like certain questions you would recommend someone to consider when they're trying to document everything in their head?
This is kind of what I like ChatGPT for. Not that I don't want you to hire me to create systems, but if you need to have a place to start to create an SOP, it's like outlining the softwares that you utilize, um, and what steps you need to do in order to make something happen, so that it can create you a general SOP, so that at least you have something to start with. I think the challenge is that nobody ever does that.
Yeah,
So we have, all of these systems, and I'm sure you see this too with people doing their finances, is that they don't have a system to implement or input that data every month. Even when they hate doing it, they don't have a system to do it. which would make things easier. So it's like, how do we streamline all of the stuff that you're doing so that it becomes a repeatable process?
That's so true. And what happens if someone never implements systems? Like, let's say you're in business for like 3 to 5 years,
Yeah.
you're growing, but the back end's such a mess that things kind of collapse.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. Like your capacity to hold all the eggs in one basket is limited. Like that basket is only going to get bigger and your capacity cannot change over time. So systems are the only thing that's going to give you more capacity to grow.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like from a financial perspective, people have like a hard time taking time off from the business because if they're
Mhm.
not actively trading their time for money, they're not actually earning money.
Totally.
And I know you have like an exciting like 2 weeks you're taking off from the business. Could you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, to be totally honest, it's been a long process of getting here. Um, we own our own home. Interest rates are ridiculous. So for the last 3, 4 years, that's where our priority has been is like how to pay the bills, how to pay the mortgage, do all of those things that we had to build enough of a nest egg in order to be able to take 2 weeks off. So it's like pre-planning. And then even when we booked this 6 months ago so that we could, one, eliminate all of our expenses before we even leave. So airfare, accommodation, travel, all those things were prepaid, so that when we do leave, we don't have those expenses. We just have spending money or whatever it is we want to spend at that time. Because my husband also works, he gets paid hourly, so he also doesn't get paid for the time off. So
Yeah.
it's literally like we're losing two incomes for 2 weeks.
That's so exciting but scary at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, there's always something about having like a corporate job and you get 2 weeks vacation and utilizing that and you still get paid. Um, but I think it's really cool to be able to do that. And I don't want to like sugarcoat it. Like it's not necessarily a simple thing depending on uh, I mean, and you know this, finances are going to be the biggest hurdle and the biggest question.
Yeah.
But I really believe that, if you have the systems in place, and part of that is like finances is a system to save money so that you can do that. But a system so that, even how you plan that, even how you I always create a project plan for any of my clients who are taking a vacation is like literally, let's break it down, all the steps that need to happen.
Yeah.
Um, because I think that's the part that people miss is they're just like, I'm going to take 2 weeks off. I'm going to tell my clients but I don't necessarily look at all the other pieces. And then they end up working.
Yeah, that's so exciting, but also so important to like pre-plan those things
Mhm.
and also like your back end. So if you were away, do you have like your VA responding to your emails or do you have like auto replies or something set up so that the back end of your inquiries and things going on, even like social media content, like is that all that stuff kind of like pre-scheduled and have systems for so all of that stuff runs without you while you're off for 2 weeks?
Yeah, so that's kind of the key of like, especially taking for 2 weeks, is
Yeah.
I started planning 6 weeks out. So I've already started to plan some content to be auto published while we're away, newsletters to go out. And I'm a planner by nature, so me starting to do something 6 months out is really easy. It's not
Yeah.
always easy for everyone else, and they want to put it on the back burner. But when we divide those things up into little chunks and start putting them out there, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to schedule an email for January 18th because that's my first day out of office.
Yeah.
And doing it while you're already doing it. So when you're sending your December newsletter, is like, okay, well, let's just take an extra half an hour and schedule the next one. So that you don't have to worry about that then. And then out of office, yes, but I have out of office on my email all the time. I think it is a great way to set boundaries and tell
Yeah.
people when you're actually going to respond or when you actually check email so that you feel less inclined to always be in your inbox.
Yeah, I never used to do that. And then during tax time, I'm like, I just have to set these up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know that anybody necessarily pays attention to it because, people will still email, but I feel like I set a boundary, here it is. I'm not responding to you.
Yeah, totally. And how do you make sure like automations don't hurt like your client experience? Like a lot of people have like money chat set up, for example, but it kind of like it doesn't even relate to what the person's asking you or like DMing you about.
Yeah, I don't particularly enjoy that app very much. I found any automation that you create in your business has to have a system to check it to make sure that it is actually running properly. I think what the challenge is that people just kind of set it as an automation and it's one and done. So even like Zapier or Zapier, whatever you want to call it, is like we put so much trust in this software that it's just going to function and do exactly what you want because you set it up once.
Yeah.
But the reality is, just like humans, it makes mistakes. So that you even have to have a system to check that it's actually working the way that you want it to.
Yeah.
I find ManyChat is a little bit like invasive to me, but that's just me. So I don't personally use that. Um, I I also don't believe there is a real urgency in responding to people. I think that's kind of the way society has created it. So if you have an out of office on and you change your out of office that you're away on vacation and not responding, if you have a banner on your website, but for your contact form, like really clearly, and even an auto response to a contact form is like, I'm on vacation, I'll get back to you then. Um, that I don't think we need to be immediately available. I think it just creates stress.
It does, yeah. Like for myself, it would be like I would check my emails first thing in the morning. I'd feel the need to respond. And then when I kind of took a step back, I was like, other than like CRA tax deadlines, there's no other sense of like urgency.
Right.
And like I would get anxious, like I need to respond to this, I need to deal with this right away. But it's like the reality is like, no, you don't. You
Yeah.
also don't need to check your emails first thing in the morning.
No, you don't even need to check them at all one day. You
Yeah.
could leave it till tomorrow. I mean, I think the world has trained us really well to think of false urgency and that everything is an emergency. Um, I guess I'm just old enough to know what it was like when we didn't have those things. We didn't
Yeah.
have immediate access and everything was fine. Um, so I've really, over the last year and a half, I've really tried to structure those pieces in my business so that I am not constantly available. So like I went to a networking event last night and I slept in this morning
Mhm.
and rearranged my office and didn't have this urgency because I have systems in my business to like start work at 8 a.m. or 9
Yeah.
a.m. and do those things.
What advice would you give someone that has like a hard time setting boundaries and think that they have to do everything like manually themselves?
That's a good question. I think it comes a lot to trust. I think as solopreneurs and entrepreneurs, is that it's kind of like your baby. Your business is your baby in one sense,
Yeah.
is that you put, again, that metaphor of putting your eggs in one basket and you hold all the cards. And I've seen this with people, even when they hire people, is that, one, our expectations of who we hire are not always necessarily realistic because we don't have those SOPs and we don't have those systems to train them. So we just assume that they're going to understand all the capacity in our brain. And to answer your question, I think it's about trust. It's like trusting other people,
Yeah.
and trusting other people that, have information or skill sets that you don't have. Because I think that's the real method to growth in any business is, relying on other people to support you. Because it all comes back again to capacity. It's like there's only so much that you can hold. So you have to create boundaries in order to have a healthy nervous system, to, not eventually resent your business, to not work 60 hours a week, to do all of those things, is it all is connected together.
On average, with the clients you work with, like how long does it take to like develop the systems and then to actually see them like working in real time?
It depends on the scope of the system. So, generally, let's take email for one instance. I think the challenge is that people don't realize that most software, the capacity of what software can do is actually bigger than most of us use it for. So something like Outlook has a lot of built-in tools that people rarely use, which could actually make your life easier. So email, that could be something that's like, let's get rid of these 14,000 emails, create some sort of filing system, so that, we're filtering things, putting things into automatic things. And something like that can be quite quick. It's just a matter of setting it up if you know how to set it up. Um, I generally work with people and take, one area of their business that needs cleanup, because if you were to do your whole business, that takes more time. So take like marketing or system or like operations or delivery or something, and then creating some sort of streamlined system that, whether it's you doing the work, you've built some sort of a procedure, some sort of a SOP, some sort of a system, so that when you are ready to grow and hire someone, that it's already documented for you.
That's like so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always funny to me. It's like systems are last, but no, they're
Yeah,
actually first.
they're actually first.
Yeah.
And there's like so many tools and so many resources out there. How do people decide like what to use? Like for email, there's Outlook, there's like Gmail, there's all these different tools. And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times we'll talk to like friends in different industries, different businesses that work for them. And it's just like you start to use those softwares, but then it doesn't really seem to be like a good fit for your business and what you're trying to do. So, how do you decide or get information on what works for your business, your industry?
It's really about like what do you want from the software, and then evaluating what softwares are available that check most of the boxes. I think the challenge is that most of us are just like, oh, I hear about this software, I'm going to
Yeah.
try it. And there is no overarching plan of how you're going to integrate it. You're just going to start using it. So like, say for example, something like Notion. A lot of people rave about Notion, and it's actually one of the least things that I would recommend for people,
Yeah.
especially when they're starting out, because it's an incredible software, but it's too robust for most people. And what happens is it just becomes like a dumping ground of information with no actual system of how you're going to utilize it. And then it just becomes a mess like your Google Drive that you are trying to clean up later. And I think the cleanup is what makes people avoid things. So I always suggest of making a list of, what are the problems that I need to solve with this software? What would be the nice to haves? The unfortunate problem is no software is going to ever check all of your boxes.
Yeah.
That's why there's a million different softwares. um, so it's like, which one can check most of the boxes? And then what system could we put in place, whether that's software or whether that's a human, to fill in the rest of the boxes. So it's always like the person first, and then evaluate the software. So I'm never going to say, go get this software, because
Yeah, totally. And I would say use something that you feel comfortable using. Like for
yeah,
myself, I've been using the same kind of tax softwares, accounting softwares for like 9 years.
yeah,
So when I started my business, I'm like, I don't care like about the new trends and what's going on. Like I feel familiar using these. And it was just more about being more efficient using them rather than like the cost of them.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And I mean, eventually you'll outgrow
Yeah.
things that is expected to happen if you're growing your business. But even if you want to utilize something as robust as Notion, I 100% believe you need to have some sort of a project plan of how you're going to utilize this, and how you're going to, name conventions and all of these things, so that it doesn't become a headache later.
So true. What are your thoughts on people hitting like income ceilings with like the type of systems they have or like the lack of systems?
Um, I think it's inevitable. If you have a lack of systems, that your income is going to hit a ceiling, because there is only, again, we come back to that capacity thing, is there's
Yeah.
only so much that you can hold yourself. Um, there's only so many clients you can take on. Um, if you haven't streamlined how you deliver your service or your product or whatever it is, there's only so much that you can do at a capacity level, which means that your revenue is also going to hit a capacity.
Yeah, so true. And then do you work primarily with like service-based businesses, product-based, or like a mix of both?
Mostly service based. Yeah.
Service-based?
Yeah.
Yeah, I always find like inventory management gets messy.
Yes. Yes. Especially if there's multiple products. One product, sure, but multiple
Yeah.
products, complicated. And then multiple places where they're storing products, complicated.
Yeah, totally.
Mm.
And then is there like certain type of businesses like you enjoy working with? Is it more project based or like do you provide like ongoing support on like a monthly retainer with businesses?
Yeah, I have a couple different ways that I work with people. So I work project based. So if it's like you have operations or you really need to streamline your marketing department or whatever it might be, we can work. Generally, it's a 3-month contract because it takes a while to, implement all those things, get all the information, etc. I have the option to work with me more on a retainer fractional COO level, which is like brainstorming the growth of the business and moving through all of those pieces to create systems over time. And then launches. So if you are launching something specific, whether that's a course or a retreat or whatever it might be, I can create the system around that so that essentially you only have to do that once and everything is documented for you to do it again or to hire a VA to do it for you.
That's so helpful and I feel like it's much needed.
Yes, yes. People love a repeatable system, right? They just
Yeah, for sure. How do you get a team to use systems instead of like resisting them? Like once like you help them build the systems, you've done the SOPs, do you do check-ins with your clients or they pretty much have to get used to using it themselves?
To be totally frank, a lot of the clients that I've worked with, a lot of their team members leave when I implement systems. I call it a little bit like cleaning house. Uh, if you have a team and you do not have systems in place, as soon as you implement systems, a lot of those people will generally leave of their own accord because they're now being held accountable to a specific outline, whereas likely before they were not. Um, it's a little bit of integrating. If you have a team, it's integrating the team to really understand the dynamics of what they do so they feel included in the process. And I think that's how you really get buy-in from your team members. If you're going to introduce a new software or you're going to introduce a new way of doing things, it's making sure that they are involved in the process and not just be like, hey, tomorrow we're going to start using this software. And everybody gets a little apprehensive when they have to learn a new software, especially when they're so accustomed to doing something a certain way.
Yeah, I feel like it can be overwhelming if it's just like thrown at you like all at once and it's like figure it out.
Yeah. And that's usually when it fails, right? And then we
Yeah.
just like, okay, well, now we're going to do it again. Now we're going to pick a different software. So
If like a founder wanted to double their profit without hiring, which kind of system and back end area would you recommend focusing on first?
that's a good question. First, I think it's delivery of their service. How do you streamline that so you are spending less time on the
Yeah.
actual delivery process of that service?
Right.
So I think service providers, what is your average amount of time that you spend with a client to deliver whatever that service is? If you are spending, 8 hours a day, that's basically a full-time job.
Yeah.
That there's, again, we have that capacity limit, so we need to streamline how that works, how you deliver, so that you have more time to increase your revenue.
Yeah, I feel like that's such great advice because that's where a lot of people spend so much time and not realizing how much time they're actually spending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually saw something the other day that said, if you can't, maybe it was you, did you post this? I don't know. Somebody said, if you can't take time off from your business, then you are a service provider and not a business
Yeah.
owner. And how true is that? Is like you have to create the structure, you have to create those things so that you can like even just willy-nilly take Friday off if you want to.
Yeah, I feel like we leave our 9 to 5s and then we get so caught up in the day to day of the service because we're
Yeah.
so used to that mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a big believer that as an entrepreneur, you do not need to work 60 hours a week
Yeah.
at all. The goal is to work less than 40, in my opinion.
I know we were talking about it too, about like when someone's building their business to sell, nobody can buy an asset that you're building if everything's in your head.
100%. Yeah. Or outdated. I had a
Yeah.
client who years ago had hired me to come in and update all their SOPs. And this was, I mean, this was in the 2000s, but all of their SOPs mentioned floppy disks. So some people don't even know what a floppy disk is, which means that your SOPs are extremely outdated. And that's where the value is like how you do things is the value.
How often should someone like update their SOPs?
I recommend that they're reviewed at least annually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just because things change, people change, or you find a new way to do things that are quicker. Or, often SOPs will have links in them. Sometimes those links break. Um, and then we get into this routine. I'm a big believer in creating routine in your business so that it doesn't feel like such a headache. And I'm sure this is true for, your clients is, find a way to do these things on a regular basis so that at the end of the year, you're not spending 2 weeks going through receipts and you don't remember
Yeah.
what anything's for.
Yeah, I would say just like pre-planning and like thinking ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like those SOPs, it's like the last thing anybody wants to deal with.
Yeah. And it's like, I always say to my clients is like, I know you hate it, but how can you make it more enjoyable? Like maybe you take yourself out for dinner with your laptop and write out everything that you do. Like how can you almost reward yourself for taking the time to do the stuff that you don't want to do? Because it still has to
Yeah,
be done.
totally. And I feel like if something happens to you where like you get sick, like family emergency, something happens, like your team can still run the business without you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the key, right? That life
Yeah.
happens, so how can you step away?
Yeah. Or even like, for example, for myself, like if I passed away or something, all my client emails, like client notes, everything's available for the next accountant that just takes over.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the value.
Yeah.
That's what
But
people
it's
want,
like
right? Like
scary thinking about those
yeah,
things.
totally, totally. I mean, it's just like you create a will
Yeah.
for your personal life. It's kind of the same thing as how do you think about your future self? And we often don't want to do that, especially when I bring in the yoga stuff, we're taught to be in the present moment. But
Yeah.
there's like this reality that life happens and it's unpredictable. And um like my mother-in-law passed away 3 years ago, and we had to basically pick everything up and move to the
Yeah.
island for 3 weeks while she was um, passing. And it's like I had to change how I was working
Yeah.
because there was all these things that needed to happen. And because of systems, not that I'm better or make more money than anybody else, but really it's about the systems that I've created in my business that give me freedom day to day so that I do have the flexibility that, if my husband called and needed me to come and get him today, I could do that without, everything hitting the fan.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like it helps like your capacity on take on like other clients or more clients or like work with different industries and like test things out because you've built the systems to like sustain your existing business.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And your life, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm. I mean, that's why we all become entrepreneurs is to, have more freedom. But to be totally frank, the only way you have freedom is with systems.
How would you like put systems in like your personal life? Would it be similar to what you're doing in the business?
Yeah, I mean, we function on systems as it is. Like we get up, we get dressed, we,
Yeah.
go to bed, we brush our teeth, we do all of these things all the time. It's just like, we think of New Year's resolutions is, we want to start something new, which is technically a new system. So if you want to go to the gym every day, that's a new
Yeah.
system you have to train yourself on. There's this element of sitting with the discomfort of doing that. Um, so it's like I really prioritize my mornings so that I can get up, when I want to.
Yeah.
I can have a cup of coffee, I can take the dog for a walk, and there's no urgency. Like, I don't take meetings generally before 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Occasionally I do. Um, I only take meetings on certain days of the week because I know that that drains my capacity to
Mhm.
be in meetings all day. That if I'm in that, I don't want to do any other work. So if I have
So
a
true.
day full of meetings, then I'm not doing anything else.
Yeah, that's so key. Before, like I would do meetings, client work, all like on the same days.
Hmm.
And I found that if I'm just doing calls, I just need to focus on the calls.
Yeah, it uses different parts of your brain, right?
Yeah.
Like different energy that you need to output in order to do those things. So, like when I work with somebody, it's, when do you do certain things best? Like, you know, do you enjoy calls? Do you want to do more of those? Is that how you deliver your service? More one on one calls like this? Or do you want to have as few calls as possible? Are you more creative in the mornings? Are you more creative in the evenings? What does that normal rhythm for each individual person look like?
Yeah, and I feel like it's so hard switching tasks and like being productive too.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we get bombarded with
Yeah.
text messages and phone calls and emails and all the things.
Yeah, totally. There's so many distractions.
Yeah. Yeah.
What advice would you give someone that doesn't have systems? Like, what are some like key, easy kind of things that they can do right away without feeling overwhelmed or not knowing where to start?
I always recommend a brain dump. Um, Generally, and I say this for even people when you feel overwhelmed, is list all of the things that you do down, like on a piece of paper, like old fashioned pen and paper. Write everything down, all of the systems that you do in your business or all the pieces that you hold, especially if you don't have a team,
Yeah,
um, so that we can begin to make it a little bit more tangible. I think the part is like when it lives in your head, it's bigger than it probably is, and it's always this thing that we're going to get to. But if I put it down on paper and be like, okay, I need to create an SOP for these 5 things that I do, it's not as big as it was when it's just in your head.
so true.
Um, and then be like, okay, well, I need to do these 5 SOPs. Okay, then you start to create some tasks of like break it down even further, right? Once we put it on paper, we can make it smaller and be like, okay, well, I'm just going to document this step. Or the next time I do this, I'm going to, use Loom and record my screen. I think Loom is a fantastic way to do SOPs and just actually record what you're doing. You don't have to type it out. You don't have to make it a fancy Word document, just literally record what it is you're doing.
That's such a good idea. I've never thought about that. Or like
Hmm.
even voice notes could work as well.
Yeah. And then you just use something like ChatGPT or you transcribe it because people learn in different ways.
Yeah,
So recording it is an easy thing to do because you're already doing it. And then have it transcribed and then have that transcription put into an SOP. Like that SOP is done in the time that it took you to deliver whatever it is you were actually doing, anyways.
that sounds so much easier than like sitting down and like writing everything for like hours.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the SOP references the Loom video for people who learn better that way. It has the whole written thing out for people who like a step by step checkbox thing, so that it meets whoever is going to be on your team and how they learn the best.
That's so helpful.
Hmm.
I feel like
Beautiful.
I just got so many ideas too.
Yeah. I mean, I do that with clients too. So anything that I create for them, I always
Yeah,
create a Loom video and a full SOP, just because we all learn differently.
that's so helpful.
Hmm.
And what's like the best way for the listeners to get in touch with you?
You can connect with me on my website, so Alison Reaume, REAUME.com, or on Instagram at Reaume Alison.
I'll share all of Allison's contact information and the notes. Thank you so much, Allison, for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
If you're a founder who wants real strategy, not noise, and you want someone in your corner helping you build a business that feels aligned, is profitable, and actually supports your life, you can apply for CFO on Call. This is my one-on-one financial partnership for established founders typically making between 500K to 2 million, who want clarity, who want structure and confidence with their numbers. The link is in the show notes so you can schedule a profit strategy call, or you can DM me CFO on Instagram at @CindyKamar and I'll send over all the details.